Can you believe a creature like that has never felt a man's tongue on her epiglottis?
You know that for a fact, I suppose.
I've done my research.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Jonathan Creek podcast, where Ian is currently researching epiglottis.
I believe they went extinct in the Jurassic era.
Yeah. Reminded me of the Solar Surgeon and Norman Tongue.
Yeah.
From Blackadder.
That's exactly right.
How are you?
I'm not too bad today. Feeling festive, Gerry. How are you?
A tad under the weather.
Under the weather?
Bit of a cold, sore throat. But I did perk up after viewing this festive episode.
It's good, isn't it?
Very enjoyable.
And that's the end of our podcast for today.
Cheerio. Yeah, no, it was an enjoyable one. I might dare to suggest my favourite episode so far.
Yeah, I think one of the things I thought watching it is you can tell they had a bit more time on this than they do in a episode of a series where you've got to work up 5 or 6 and get them all produced.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just working on one, obviously there's a bit more time and a bit more attention. And who knows, maybe a bit more budget.
And I think the special guest star this week elevated things. His performance was magnificent.
It was very good, and also the way he was used, the character that they gave him, was very clever. Uncommon.
Uncommon. He was very clever. He was quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Gracious.
Absolutely.
But we can discuss him in greater detail as we progress through the podcast. Now, to do that, we need to begin.
How do we do that?
Normally by a summary.
Okay, you got one ready?
Yep.
Okay, crack on.
No, I don't. Can you do one?
Okay.
Crack on.
In Black Canary, Jonathan and Maddie are contacted by one of Jonathan's former girlfriends, who has a tragic mystery to unravel. Following the apparent suicide of her mother, there is much amiss, and she hopes her old friend can help put the pieces back together. Both Jonathan and dynamic Police Inspector Gideon Pryke seem to be putting the pieces together, but in the end, can they snare the suspect, or is the killer already beyond their reach?
Gideon Pryke. Like it.
It's an interesting name. I'm not sure. Is Pryke a real name?
Probably.
Believable.
Certainly. A large home. Like so often is where we begin this week's episode, and we find out it's the Canary residence.
It's a very fictionalised view of British winter, isn't it? With the snowfall and the...
Picturesque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't get white Christmases very often.
Well, we don't. I'm sure in different parts of the country.
Oh, maybe in Orkney.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
There's a lovely crane shot which sweeps across into a snow-covered, gothic-looking house and onto an old magic book.
Yes, and some other sort of magic and occult paraphernalia and a fire roaring.
Yeah, at one point I was expecting to hear Rosebud. But no. We have an imposing and mysterious score over more occultish artefacts.
Yes, a woman smokes in front of the fire as we see a grotesque model of a younger woman looming over her, reaching for her.
Correct. Now we come to learn that this woman who is smoking is a Marella Carney.
Yes.
And in another room, the occult is being practiced, it would seem.
It looks that way. It's all very mysterious.
We see a woman, and she gives a seated man a drink of some sort of potion, as another younger female, who we come to learn is Charlotte.
She looks a bit sceptical here.
She does. She looks on from the doorway.
Yes, the man in the wheelchair stands, some first miracle, disrobes, and another man starts making weird gestures in front of his face.
Yes, we find out he is from Vietnam.
Yes, and he is performing some form of psychic surgery.
Well, he claims to be.
Well, that's what he sold them on. Literally sold to them on.
Yes. He puts the previously wheelchair bound man into some sort of trance.
And while he's doing that, Charlotte, who's the sceptical one, runs out to the corridor and shouts to the woman downstairs by the fire, asks if she's going to allow this to happen.
Yeah, did we mention that's her mother?
Yes.
Yes, we did, okay.
Or if we didn't, we have now.
Marella, however, appears unwilling to intervene, and so Charlotte walks back just in time to see the Vietnamese man apparently pull some tissue directly through the skin of the patient. Now, let's describe this relationship then. So the patient is Gerry.
Yes.
And he is the husband of Marella, who is downstairs smoking.
Yes.
And the father of Charlotte.
Correct. Yeah, Marella doesn't just seem disinterested, she seems disengaged completely from the whole thing.
Now, by this point, the mother is in the doorway herself. She turns away, and I think we said disinterested. I thought more than disgust.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I thought she just seemed to be it was almost washing over her in a way sense. She wasn't really part of what was going on.
Perhaps perhaps this isn't the first time she has witnessed her husband being susceptible to this type of jiggery-pokery.
Yeah, maybe. He's still lying on this table slab, whatever it is, while the other man's gesticulating around him.
And the wound from where this tissue is meant to have been pulled is miraculously healed.
Yeah, and Charlotte looks quite confused about this.
Yeah.
She seems to believe something has taken place.
So we've got Charlotte and a charlatan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gerry didn't seem to be experiencing any pain.
No.
At all. So clearly he wasn't wounded.
If anyone ever tried to extract my exquisite floppily dopplies from my body with their bare hands, I would be a bit of discomfort. I'd have thought.
Do you know that you would ask, what is that piece of tissue? Why are you removing it?
Yeah, what's your qualifications?
How does that help the thing that's wrong with me?
Yeah, how did you know to pull that out? Even if you could pull it out, are you just grabbing bits of things that are in there?
Yeah, I mean, any surgeon could cut into me and remove a bit of tissue. If it was good to cure me, why did they not suggest it?
Doesn't have magic hands, so that's why.
That's it. Pass the powers through and then that piece needs to be removed.
We leave this nonsense and we head to Monument Tube Station.
Yeah, Charlotte exits the station. This is clearly the following day, perhaps, or later the same day. I think the following day at least.
Following day, yeah.
And as she exits the station, we see Jonathan.
Yeah, their paths cross. They don't speak to each other, but I think they both... It's one of those things where you recognise someone for a second, and by the time you've worked out who it is, the moment's gone.
It seemed like a bit of a sliding doors moment. Would he approach her? No. He wanders off, and she looks round as if she also clocked him.
Yeah, there's obviously some sort of history there.
Yeah, she's off to the Department of Cytology, she said?
Psychology.
Psychology?
What's cytology?
I don't know, that's what I thought was a bit weird.
Certainly would be.
That's what the subtitles said.
Really?
I'm like, what's that? I don't know.
I think it's psychology.
I thought it was just some sort of mumbo-jumbo.
No, I think it meant university, London University, which...
So she went to the Department of Psychology.
I think so.
That's a real word.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Of course.
So I thought, is that something they put in originally they were going to replace? Okay, fair enough. I'll let you have that one.
So we see her looking back as well.
Yeah. And we skip over to the theatre where Adam is meeting with Elsa from Wardrobe.
Yes. When Jonathan arrives, he witnesses Adam being a sex pest again.
Yes.
What's he doing?
He's harassing poor Elsa.
How is he doing that?
He is using this video pen, which Jonathan notes has been repaired. So obviously some problems with it previously and different problems with it now.
Yeah, he's using it to look down Elsa's top.
Yeah, creepy man.
Yeah, and project the image onto the large video screen in the theatre.
Inappropriate.
Very inappropriate. So the victim, Elsa, she's going to leave. What is her instruction before she does?
Yeah, Jonathan reminds Adam that he needs an outfit for a Jack the Ripper sequence. And she acts like she's never heard of Jack the Ripper. But they tell her it's a top hat and a frog suit.
Yeah. And when she leaves, Adam rabbits on about how untouched she is. We heard that at the top of the podcast. And then I think he ponders ways of committing rape.
It sounds that way.
It does.
I think in his mind it's different, but it's certainly an inappropriate conversation.
In the mind of a judge or jury, it probably wouldn't be different.
Yeah, but that's if he actually did anything that he said he's going to do, I suppose.
Yeah.
He's just a sleazy man.
Back over to the Canary home. Marella is writing a note asking for forgiveness and love, and it's addressed to whom?
To Gerry and Iain.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Spelt differently.
Yes, they've spelled Gerry with a J and they've spelled Iain with a Charlotte.
With a Charlotte, yes. She then sorrowfully looks at a picture of happier times with her husband and Charlotte, and then at a photograph of herself and a remarkably similar woman.
Presumably a sister of some kind.
A twin.
It looks that way.
Does.
She takes a Bible from her drawer and looks out at the blizzard outside.
Yes, as the camera pulls back. Another nice shot, and I think some of these shots are examples of having a little bit more time, slightly higher production value.
Absolutely, and they work very well on the atmosphere and setting up the whole feel of the episode.
Back over to the theatre, and Jonathan and Adam are practicing a trick with this video pen on stage. But Adam appears to be in some pain.
Yeah, I thought maybe appendicitis, but I think it's gallstones he's suffering from.
We do find that out later. At this point, Maddie calls. So she calls to the dressing room. An assistant sets off to try and get Jonathan.
Yep.
But in the meantime, Jonathan and Adam enter the dressing room.
Of their own accord, with the phone off the hook.
Yes, because she's placed the phone down to go and get them, so she's left it. The call is live. Maddie's on, can hear what's being said.
Yeah, unbeknown to them.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Adam discuss his almost meeting with Charlotte. Jonathan explains who Marella Carney is. Well, Adam knows, but he reminds them.
Yeah, for our benefit, a bit of exposition. Yeah, she's a retired magician. She was known as the Black Canary.
She abruptly retired 15 years ago, but hasn't worked since.
No, Jonathan tells him he saw her daughter, Charlotte, and Adam then remembers that she had been apparently the lust of his life for a while.
Adam can empathise with that, I think. Mm-hmm. One of the few feelings he has.
Unfortunately, we see that Maddie is still on the phone and hears all this before Adam hangs up.
Yeah, she hears about this terrible date that Jonathan and Charlotte had, or this terrible end to a date. It was actually quite a good date from what Jonathan says, but at the conclusion of the date, she invited him up to her place and he thought it was some kind of trick, lacking in the confidence to go for, or, you know, he didn't believe that she actually wanted him. He thought it was some kind of game.
I wouldn't have believed that either. Yeah. It don't seem like a match to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you feel you're on a date with someone that's out of your league, you're maybe suspicious.
Wouldn't know what that feels like, Ian.
No, me neither, but I'm only assuming.
Okay. Anyway.
You better hope your wife doesn't listen to this.
Why?
You're saying that she's not out of your league?
No, we're both in the top tier.
Oh, okay. After Adam hangs up the phone, it rings again. It's Maddie calling back, and she's wanting Jonathan to come round to her house. She needs him in her bedroom tonight.
Yeah, can only imagine.
I'm sure he does.
So, where do we go?
Maddie's flat, and there's a cockroach on her bedroom roof.
Yeah, but before we see that, a nervous Maddie watches Jonathan remove his shoes, and perhaps we're meant to believe that he's going to remove more clothing before proceeding, but no, he jumps on top of her bed.
I don't think anyone's buying that tease anymore. If they were going to get together, it would have happened.
Okay.
We're now 2+ years into this. You don't think so?
Sometimes some foods take a while to. I don't know where I'm going with that analogy.
Yeah,
some
smoked salmon can hang for many.
Aged fine wine.
If the seagull follows the
whiskey and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you can't just drink it straight away.
Oh, okay. This
bit didn't make too much sense. Jonathan goes up to get the cockroach, and he uses the old cup and piece of paper manoeuvre.
And then he's quite comfortable with the cockroach, handles it happily.
But he's about to kill it.
Yes.
So what's the whole thing about the cup and the paper is generally when you want to
save it,
so you take it outside if it's some sort of insect.
Maddie probably didn't want it squished onto her roof.
Yeah, but I mean, back in the day, I'd have grabbed a hanky or a paper towel, fingers, that would have been it.
With a cockroach, it's quite crunchy.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a cockroach in my house. It's not.
No, I've never seen one.
Too cold.
Other than in the zoo.
Yeah. On the holiday, I've seen them on the holiday.
Right. Little tiny ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen one that size that they had. He goes to flush it down the toilet, and she quite rightly says no, because everyone knows when you flush a bug down the toilet, it returns twice the size.
And bites your bum?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I've known that since I was a child.
Mm-hmm. She tells him to take it to the bottom of the garden and kill it with a spade.
Yes, it seems a bit excessive. Once it's in the garden, surely.
It's a homing cockroach.
Yeah.
Anyway.
While he's out doing that, his mobile rings.
It does.
This is a bit of a weird one. Are we meant to believe... There's a suggestion later on that the date with Charlotte was some time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yet she still has his mobile number. He had a mobile back then. How long ago?
It was only 3 years.
Okay, so that's 95.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody had mobiles in 95, or very few people did. And if they did, they didn't have the same mobile number. 19.
Yeah, you're right. I don't believe she had his number to hand, but yeah, even mobiles back then, they didn't all have the facility to store numbers. Yeah. But he'd have been working for Adam back then.
So maybe got a hold of the number.
Yeah, she could have phoned up Adam. It wouldn't have taken long to find out where Adam was performing and phone up the theatre.
Yeah, I suppose that's possible.
Bigger issue here is that this is his mobile now, and Maddie answers it.
That's such an invasion of privacy.
It's
even more so than the landline, which was bad enough.
Total trope. This and the answering of the phone and the POV shot.
Yeah.
Maddie answers the phone.
She did.
And she finds out who it is and happily hands it to Jonathan. I mean, I think she's thinking, this will be uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what she was going to do. Was she going to hang up and say it was, or pretend it didn't happen, or is she going to spin him a line? But no, she hands him the phone. Lets him take the call.
With a sneer.
Yeah.
So Jonathan takes the phone and listens to what Charlotte has to say.
Hello?
Jonathan? It was you I passed this morning, coming out of the tube.
Sorry?
Oh, you wouldn't have noticed me 3 years ago. Changed beyond all recognition, probably. I'm sorry. This is the worst day of my life.
What happened?
Do you remember something you said to me once? There's no such thing as magic. Real magic. You didn't believe in anything you couldn't touch or see. This afternoon, at 4 o'clock, my mother killed herself. How she did, I defy anyone to explain. It's like a kind of madness has taken over, and there are no rules anymore about life or death.
A fairly disturbing call to get from someone you've not spoke to for 3 years.
Yeah, you might also be wondering why you're phoning me.
Yeah, and you might also be wondering why she claims that you might not recognise her after 3 years.
Yeah, how different can she look?
Yeah. What if you had an accident? Have you?
I think maybe she was trying to be bashful, I guess. I don't even know. Anyway, he does seem a bit concerned.
Yeah, and we see at this point Charlotte's mother's body being bagged up and pushed past the giant statue. We've seen that a few times in Columbo and other shows where they don't tend to, you wouldn't like bag it on the move.
No, I don't think you would. Do you think nowadays you get charged 5p for that bag?
10 for on that side. That's a bag for life.
We get another Jonathan Creek trope immediately in the following scene.
What's that?
Maddie's terrible driving and bad car maintenance.
Yeah, she's defrosting as she drives and complaining that they are off to see this floozy.
Yeah, she's not happy with Charlotte for some reason.
No.
Perhaps because Jonathan likes her. Certainly because Jonathan likes her.
He is understandably moaning about the condition of her vehicle.
Yeah, the windscreen washer's not doing a great job.
No, sitting in the back seat, enjoying the trip. At this point, Jonathan explains to her the secret of Marella Carney's act. What was that?
Oh, she had a twin sister.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it not magic, and Jonathan's quite disparaging about it.
And it was the sister that performed all the hard parts of the act because Marella was claustrophobic, couldn't get into coffins and confined spaces, etc.
That was the story, and her sister met a brutal and gruesome end.
Yeah, it was quite brutal.
Yeah, actually, the depiction of it comes later on.
Yeah.
David Rennick apparently expected significant numbers of complaints about this, and they didn't come.
Yeah, I could see why you would expect that.
Yeah.
It was hard to watch. One of those ones where you sort of turn away a little bit.
Yeah, just imagining it, as Maddie does.
Yeah, well, let's describe this grisly end that Beryl, her sister, met.
It was fitting for a Bond movie.
Yes. I expect you to die.
Shortly. She's strapped to a table while a buzzsaw moves up towards her, and in the trick the saw is meant to drop away and a fake saw take its place, and then imagine that she's sawn in half, and so on. The trick continues. But on this occasion the blade did not drop away. The fake blood did not come in, and she was actually sawn in half.
Yeah, lengthways. From the bottom up, so to speak.
Bottom up. Why you would design a trick with this even a possibility, I don't know. Surely you would have like the end of the buzzsaw, but can't physically reach the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, would that not be an obvious safety?
Yeah, it would be. You should perhaps apply to be Jonathan's assistant, the assistant to the assistant.
No, I don't think health and safety is what they focus on in these things. But
well, you're messing about in your own house with it anyway. It's not under controlled.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what you get.
These things happen, eh?
Yeah, Maddie doesn't take it well.
No, she is feeling it, I think.
Certainly.
And when they get to the house, Charlotte tries to tell the story again, and Maddie's not having it.
Yeah. Although before they get there, Jonathan states that accidents happen, but suddenly considers the possibility that it might not have been an accident. Mm-hmm. So
not for any reason. But
no. He's been watching Columbo Goes to the Guillotine.
That's the one. Why would Columbo put his head in the guillotine?
Oh,
it makes no sense.
Charlotte's house now.
Yes, and as I say, Charlotte tries to recap the same story, and Maddie's not letting her.
But with the help of flashbacks, a now more composed Charlotte brings Jonathan up to speed on what's been happening. So after the accident, Marella's sister's daughter, who is Hannah, the cousin of Charlotte, she went off travelling.
Well, I thought the suggestion was she'd already run away.
Yeah, you might be right.
And there's some implication later on that perhaps she was on drugs.
Yes.
And she appears to have made her way to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, she's not been seen for many, many years.
Yeah, but in the last couple of weeks, a letter had arrived. Pan Duc Lau and Hannah were coming to England together.
Mm-hmm. Now, Pan Duc Lau was the conman we saw earlier.
Yes, and Hannah was the mysterious woman in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that.
We will.
Charlotte understood why her mother was uneasy, but it seemed deeper, and this was where I kind of had a little flicker that perhaps there was a switcheroo going on. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. As soon as you bring twins into a murder mystery when one of them's a victim, or even one of them's the killer, the suspect, yeah, it's hard not to consider that possibility. Yeah. I mean, anyway. It would be a nice red herring. Yes. But, okay, anyway. They do have red herrings here about the suggestion that there was an actual murder of the sister and so on, but that's not one of them. Yeah, we hear more about Lau. He's a psychic surgeon, and Charlotte's father was up for trying anything that would help him with his angina and his crumbling bones. Yeah. We should also mention that this letter wasn't met with a great deal of happiness that you might expect. Yeah, no, like I said, she felt a deep unease, and Charlotte didn't understand why her mother was so unhappy. I think someone mentioned that perhaps they expected Hannah would be holding a grudge against Marella. She was involved in her mother's death, yeah. Charlotte goes into a bit of detail about this procedure that Gerry underwent with Hannah's friend, whose name I've scrolled past, Pan Duc Lau. And she also says that Marella didn't sleep after this. She had a rough night. Yes, and the next morning they left, and Hannah appeared cold towards Marella. Yeah, it looks in the reconstruction that we see like Hannah is whispering something to Marella, and Marella looks gravely concerned. Yeah, and Charlotte says that you might expect that this was the end of things, but in fact the horror was just beginning. Yeah, and as she's telling the story, her father, Gerry Billinitis, arrives. He does, in his wheelchair, but has to read lips, as his hearing is very poor these days. His eyes are fine, however, and it was he who saw his wife's fate in the garden. Yeah, I think Gerry picks up the tale here. They learned that Charlotte and Gerry both left the house around about 10:30 in the morning, and he returned 2:30 in the afternoon. There were 4 or 5 inches of snow, but the snowfall itself had begun to ease up. He went through to the conservatory. With the help of Lionel, who looks straight out of a Hammer horror movie. And he's off to the woodshed to whittle, which I thought might be a euphemism. Probably. Yeah. Gerry dozes off in his seat and wakes around an hour and a half later. And when he wakes, he sees what looks to him like Morella arguing with somebody in the garden.
Yeah, Gandalf.
Yes. She pulls a gun on the man, who limps off, and then she turns the gun on herself. And he's devastated to see her shoot herself in the mouth.
So a couple of things to mention here. Firstly, we should point out that Lionel gave Gerry some pills and an alarm clock. So again, these are the type of things where it's not a normal occurrence. Now, in a murder mystery, when you see someone who has witnessed a crime being given pills and an alarm clock to either wake you or make sure you know what time it's meant to be, it's always a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, and you think, is he being woken for a particular reason, or is it the wrong time that's been put up there? Is he being misled? Because quite often Jonathan Creek has done it before, where there's time isn't what people think it is.
I mean, time shifts, things like that, yeah. The other thing that stood out, and it might just be because of the type of show it is, and it's not a documentary, but she apparently shot herself in the face with a shotgun. With
no blood?
It looked as if someone had given her a slap to the mouth. Yeah, a little or a couple of red flecks. She should have been missing a head.
Or most of it, anyway.
Yeah.
And you think, who do you know has been shot in the head with a shotgun?
Kurt Cobain.
Okay, what did his head look like?
Oh, a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a shotgun would destroy your head. Or certainly, if you put it near your mouth, it's blowing off your jaw and the bottom half of your face. You'd
probably lose your faith as well.
You would do, yes. So yeah, her head was no way representative to a shotgun victim.
Yes, so do we assume that is modified for the television audience, or is it something that they should have picked up on as a clue?
No, I think it has been. I think the explanation is, in fairness, it's been modified because it'd be far too grisly for this is broadcasting on Christmas Eve. Perhaps not the type of thing that you want to be showing a viewer,
allow the imagination to fill in the blanks.
I think so.
Gerry runs out to his fallen wife.
Yes, we noted before, whilst he uses a wheelchair, he's not actually bound to it.
Yeah, he's able to move to a certain extent. And he's shocked to find one set of footprints leading to her body and none leading away. Yeah,
I've got an issue with that as well.
Why would you notice that?
You wouldn't notice that at all. That's what I'm thinking. Your wife has just committed suicide in front of you. Well, you don't notice these footprints. No, you don't. I
suppose devil's advocate, you saw her arguing with this guy, you want to see where he's gone. You look over and you think, where did he go? There's no footprint.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I think in that circumstance, you're not looking at footprints. That's the type of thing that Columbo picks up on, or Jonathan Creek. But anyway, we'll give them that.
We skip ahead a little bit in the reconstruction, and we see a paramedic aggressively questioning Gerry's account of the death.
We do, yes. He is quite assertive, isn't he?
Yeah, he's almost like he's saying, you've killed her, haven't you? You've killed her. Tell the truth.
Yeah, what information does he provide?
The woman had been dead for at least 5 hours.
Yeah, but that turns out not to be true.
Does it not?
I think later on we find out it was only 4 hours.
Oh, so he's ballparked it a wee bit.
Yeah, a bit too generous.
Maybe he should put that smug grin back in his face.
I think so.
Off his face, yeah.
Back in the present day, Gerry asks Jonathan if this was another example of Pan's powers.
Jonathan's so dismissive of the trick that they're almost embarrassed.
Yes. And immediately explains how the operation that was apparently performed on Gerry could have been pulled off.
Yeah, they don't even question it. They just accept, yeah, he's right, we're idiots.
He embarrasses him further by correctly assuming that a fee was involved.
Absolutely. At this point, Charlotte changes tack a little bit by mentioning the suicide note.
She does. Before that, she had confirmed that her mother was fine until Hannah and Pan had arrived. She says this all looks dodgy now.
Yeah, she's a bit concerned.
Now, at mention of this note, Jonathan's ears prick up.
They do, and Charlotte asks if they want to take the lift up, and it's a bit of a squeeze, so Jonathan immediately agrees, but Maddie has other ideas. Well, not other ideas, but a variation on the idea.
She's been a bit catty.
She inserts herself between Charlotte and Jonathan in this lift, face to face with Charlotte, with her back to Jonathan.
Yeah, now the lift comes to quite an abrupt halt, and at this, Jonathan falls forward, and because of this, notices a red mark on the lift wall.
Yeah.
Or is it outside the lift?
I think it's inside the lift.
Okay, yeah.
Meanwhile, Madeline's acting like a bit of a pain to Charlotte, winding her up about her father.
Not for the last time in this episode, she's a bit nasty.
She's not very endearing. Like, from an audience point of view, are we meant to be rooting for Maddie here? Because she's not behaving in a way that I particularly liked.
No, I agree. As an audience, you're not thinking, oh, I hope Jonathan doesn't go with that Charlotte. You know, he's destined for Maddie. No, you're thinking, that'd be nice if Jonathan went with Charlotte.
Absolutely.
I mean, he'd have done well for himself there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was rooting for Jonathan and Charlotte. I was worried about how they were going to avoid that being the conclusion. But we'll get to that as well, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. We are now in Marella's bedroom. Maddie reads the note and asks what Marella wanted forgiveness for. That was something she mentioned.
Yeah. There's some sort of talk about her sister's death, but Charlotte clarifies that there was no plot or exploitation or anything like that. They split everything 50-50. They got on really well.
Yeah, there was no great secret animosity.
No. Jonathan takes particular note of the suicide note being signed with an X.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan heads back to the lift and in the hall notices that the mark now appears to have been ripped off.
Yes, and there's a new group of people on the scene, but led by D.I. Gideon Pryke, who got a brief mention at the top of the show.
Yeah, a very colourful chap, and he tells Jonathan that he has heard of his talent and doesn't object to the amateur being involved, although he does appear to be on top of things, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think that's probably why he doesn't object to the amateur being involved, because the other policemen we've seen in the past who object to Jonathan's involvement for the most part, I think are a bit angry that he can figure out and they can't.
Yeah, they don't have the confidence. They feel exposed and vulnerable, perhaps embarrassed about the possibility of being shown up by someone with better powers than themselves. But when you're good and you know you're good,
yeah, you don't need to worry about that sort of thing.
You don't. It's the confidence shines through, and yeah, I just thought this was okay. We'll talk about him later, but yeah, I couldn't help. Every time he was on screen in this episode, I smiled. Did
you feel when he says, a couple of times he seems to be a step ahead of Jonathan? So do you think he is making a point to Jonathan when he says, "What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" As if he knows Jonathan's not thought of this yet?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's having a little bit of fun.
Yeah,
but I don't think he would take exception. And we see that. I don't think he would take exception if he is proven wrong or Jonathan gets one over on him. I think he knows he's good. He respects Jonathan and he's liking the two. I suppose that often he won't be in a position where he has someone of an equal stature.
Yeah, I suppose that's right.
So we find out that it was Pryke who was responsible for removing the mark from the wall so as to compare it to the suicide note.
Yes, and he also makes mention of a shortened flex in the conservatory.
Uh-huh. So Pryke asks one of his colleagues, Sergeant Ritchie, to do his bidding, go and get this piece of paper analysed. And this is the start of what would you call it?
Insensitive.
Yeah. The whole thing is that Maddie and Jonathan can't work out if Ritchie is male or female.
Yeah.
And in those days, you wouldn't even consider the fact that maybe some transgender or some other... It's either male or female, and we need to figure out which one it is.
Okay, we'll not dig in too deeply on it, but yeah, it wasn't that funny. Anyhow, Gideon talks about this shortened flex, and Jonathan's not clocked this yet, and it leads to a gathering in the conservatory.
Yes. Did you notice as Pryke walks away, he gives Maddie a slide? He's a bit of a ladies' man. And I think, and she is very attracted to him. And I think as a contrast to Jonathan, and also the fact that during this episode, she might be feeling herself jealous and vulnerable and unloved, or not quite as needed. So she would be looking to fill that gap slightly. So, and you can see why Pryke would be an attractive. Would be very charismatic,
Absolutely.
Successful, intelligent, good looking in his way.
That's harsh.
Yeah,
good looking generally. He seems like he's perfectly prolific actor in leading roles.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So we're at the conservatory now. Lionel can offer no explanation to the flex issue.
No, he doesn't have much to say for himself really at this point, does he?
Charlotte chips in.
She's got a theory that it might be to stop the person in the chair putting the light on.
Yeah, Jonathan gently dismisses this and explains that there's easier ways to achieve that.
Yeah, you just take the bulb out.
Or he says the fuse, yeah.
Yeah, I think the bulb would be easier than the fuse.
Yeah, but you might notice the bulb and replace it, whereas a fuse isn't this type of thing you would replace straight away necessarily.
Yes, I suppose if you're being surreptitious.
Pryke then goes on to question Lionel.
Tiny detail, Mr. Prekop. You said you knocked on Miss Carney's bedroom door at 1:30 to ask her if she wanted any lunch. And her response was, "Thanks, Lionel, but I can't face anything just at this moment."
Correct.
Those were her exact words to you, through the door.
That is what she said.
Then a couple of hours later, she's outside, having a Barney with some phantom character who appears to be able to walk on air. Mr. Illusionist. How do we explain that one? If I weren't a rational man, I'd say there was devilry at work in this house. You got an Eastern mystic who removes people's organs without leaving a mark on their body. What do you reckon? Sleight of hand with a blood pellet and some pig's liver? No, I don't think he's the one who's been leading us all a merry dance here. Is he, Mr. Prekop?
I beg your pardon.
Back to base with him, Sergeant. Let's see what he can tell us.
Back to base? You're joking, surely to heaven. I mean, what sort of lame-brain logic is this? Have you all gone stark raving mad?
Hoisting his own petard there.
Out in the snow, a confident Pryke is now running the show and reminds them that a dead woman would not have been able to speak with Lionel as he had just claimed.
And pathology has shown she was dead by noon.
Yes, so that was what I mentioned earlier, 4 p.m. 4 hours, because that was 4 p.m.
Well, it says by noon. She could have been dead at 11.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So we'll let the paramedic back off the hook. He's out of prison.
Yes, but why was she dead by noon?
Oh, barbiturates
Yes.
flooding her system.
So it wasn't the shotgun that had killed her.
No. Interesting, isn't it?
And at this, Pryke strides off to an upbeat score.
He's very purposeful, isn't he?
Down to the police station, and he, Pryke that is, sits across from Lionel, who confirms that he has worked for the family for 33 years. What does Pryke ask next?
He asks straight out, did Lionel kill her?
He responds initially with an emotional plea, and then categorically, after a request, states no.
No.
The woods is where we are next.
Yeah, Jonathan and Maddie are arriving there in their car, and they're trying to figure out where this limping man would have emerged from the woods had that been the way he went.
Yeah, and to help them with this puzzle, they are eating some toffees.
Yeah, now this is fortuitous, isn't it? Because we learn later that the man actually went in entirely the opposite direction, but yet he's yards away from them as they do this.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Maddie taunts Jonathan by talking up Gideon.
She pushes his buttons, as we've seen before.
Yeah, and then they get back into debating whether the DS is a man or a woman, and put some money on it.
They do. Before Maddie asks about the dot of blood, she assumed, found on the wallpaper.
Yes.
But he points out it doesn't have to be blood before expanding on what he knows. The blood was in fact nail varnish, and it's odd that Marella signed the note with a kiss.
And also that it's a claustrophobe would be in a lift to start with.
Yeah.
You got a claustrophobe if you're claustrophobic?
I think so. Sounds okay. We'll use it.
Yeah.
He then hints that Marella may in fact have been her sister Beryl, and at this, Maddie's eyes light up.
Yeah, she's confident now that that is true.
Yeah, she said it explains everything, but Jonathan points out it doesn't explain the mysterious death, just perhaps the motive. Yeah. Or doesn't even explain the motive at this point.
No, it changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
Put it that way. If it's true, which he doesn't know.
And as they leave for the car, the camera pans and moves on to a set of footprints which lead to a ramshackle hut.
Yeah, I don't know if the show's done this before, where it gives you a bit of a clue that they've missed.
Can't remember.
No.
Nice touch. Like it.
Yeah, it shows that they were close and didn't quite get the right information.
Now they're back at the car, and what do they find?
The window's been smashed in, and all that's been stolen are the newspapers?
Yep. Odd.
Very. Not as odd as Adam at the theatre.
No, Jonathan returns and is faced with the result of a misunderstanding.
It's that frog suit for the Jack the Ripper scene.
Yeah.
Is now a frog outfit.
Yes, we didn't really mention, but Elsa is not English.
She's Austrian.
She is, and has not understood what she was meant to procure. So rather than a frog suit, she's wearing a Toad of Toad Hall outfit.
It was very well done,
Adam
wasn't it?
is, yeah, it was great, and you'd expect Adam to be extremely angry.
No, but he's refusing to accept there's a problem and warns Jonathan if he complains or does anything about this, he will be fired.
Yeah, he is infatuated.
Well, I don't know if infatuation is the right word. It's his current thing.
Yeah, I mean, he calls it, yeah, did you say that? He calls her the future Mrs. Claus.
I didn't say it, but he does. But I imagine that once he gets his way with her, he'll move on to the next thing very quickly.
Where's Amanda Holden?
Exactly.
We quickly return to the hut in the woods, and we have a POV shot.
Yes.
And see that the cops are now interviewing a young boy who found a man in this hut, which is his den.
Yes, there's newspapers and a book of matches in the hut.
He was using the newspaper to light a fire so that he could eat some animal.
Gideon identifies it immediately as woodpecker.
He does.
I don't know if that's true, if he's just being funny.
The man had ran off when the boy arrived, and the boy identified him as having a limp.
Yes. And they find a fake tooth.
They do a crown, which Pryke knows is as good as a fingerprint. It will have been made especially for someone, and it will be able to ID the owner.
They'll be able to track them down.
Back over to the theatre dressing room, and Adam is telling Jonathan about his new outlook on love and life in general.
He's now in favour of commitment.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, he asks about Charlotte.
He does, and Jonathan is about to give him some more information just as Maddie barges in, inquiring about Adam's gallstones.
She leaves, though, and Jonathan's reluctant to proceed because he thinks she might be listening in.
Yeah, he knows what she's like. She is a gossip, she's a journalist, she is nosy.
Very.
So he creeps over and expects her to be having the ear up at the keyhole.
But she's not there.
She's not. He's a bit confused about this.
Yeah, but nevertheless he proceeds unguarded in his conversation.
Now, what does he tell Adam?
Well, they talk about Charlotte briefly, and he suggests that they didn't really think it was the right, or he didn't think it was the right sort of circumstances to try anything, and Adam thinks he completely ignores the fact the woman's mother has just died. Mm-hmm. Doesn't occur to him that might be an issue. Talks about Maddie being a roadblock. It's their unresolved issues there. Jonathan entertains him, I suppose, to an extent. He responds in good spirits and says to him, Maddie's more like a comfy sweater that you are happy to have on every day. I think he means that in a good way. He means that he enjoys her company.
Yeah, but
he doesn't really put thought into it. It's not a relationship that he's pursuing aggressively or proactively.
Yeah, and no woman is going to appreciate being described as a comfy old sweater.
Well, no woman who wants a different type of relationship.
Yeah.
If she was just his pal, I think that maybe would be fine. But
yeah.
Well, even then, it's not the best choice of words.
No. Unfortunately, Maddie is being more sophisticated than using an ear at the keyhole. She has got a hold of the video pen, or the camera too. She's left the video pen in the changing room, and she's now viewing this through the monitor outside and recording it.
Quite fortuitous that she put it exactly where it would film Jonathan's face.
Yeah.
Is it on Adam's shoulder or something where she put it?
Maybe it is, I don't know. But yes, that's the situation, and she's now got a tape of this.
Yes, although she doesn't know what was said because there's no audio.
No.
I wonder, how will she find someone to read their lips?
Where are we next?
Yeah, we've reached the halfway point of the episode, and we go to a cafe. Maddie and Jonathan are driving, or they park up.
It's a roadside cafe in the wooded area.
Yeah, and Maddie suggests that they don't tell Charlotte about the Beryl switch theory at this point because it would probably be upsetting for her. And she's off to get Jonathan a coffee.
Yes, he stays in the car and has an unfortunate run-in with a hillbilly type.
Yeah, he very unsubtly locks his car door when this guy comes past. I'm not entirely sure what he thinks the guy's going to do.
No, however, that's his right to lock his door. Yeah. And this Neanderthal reacts crazily.
Illegally?
Yeah, he starts smashing at the car, grabbing it. He smashes the car window and grabs Jonathan by the throat for having the audacity.
Well, he invites Jonathan to step outside the car, and Jonathan won't.
Quite rightly so.
So he kicks the window in and starts choking Jonathan until Gideon appears to save the day.
He does. Gideon should have arrested this man.
He should have done. He said he threatens to arrest them both. I think he means the man and his wife, not the man and Jonathan.
Yes.
The man storms off and drives away.
Maddie comes back.
She's dismayed to find the window broken.
You would
She's
be.
just had the other one fixed. In fact, I think she was complaining about the cost of it, either earlier in this scene or in an earlier scene. Gideon's ahead of them on this Marella being, or at least up to speed with them on the idea of Marella really being Beryl. But he's convinced that Lionel's behind it, although he's had to release him for now.
Yes, and he's also went one step further than Jonathan with the tooth clue.
Yes, he's got this leading the limping man, and the way he presents this, you feel like Jonathan's been well and truly emasculated.
Yeah.
His thunder has been stolen.
Over to Carney home, and Charlotte is helping pick glass from Jonathan's torso as a jealous Maddie looks on before they're startled by a gunshot.
Yes, it turns out Gerry likes to shoot, so he's out in the garden firing off rounds.
Odd thing to be doing after your wife has
been shot in the face.
Probably
with that same gun?
No, but you see later on that they have a gun rack. So.
Okay.
But in any case, shooting in the garden where your wife just shot herself.
Yeah, and shooting with deadly accuracy.
He's very good, isn't he?
Lionel is quite surprised, I think, although you'd think he'd be used to the level of accuracy.
I think perhaps he is surprised under these circumstances that he's got a steady aim.
Perhaps. At this point, Madeline reminds Jonathan that he wanted to see the scrapbooks.
Yes, the press cuttings of Marella. And when he leaves to go upstairs to retrieve them, Maddie and Charlotte have a chat, and we discover that their last date was... Well, we're now hearing the other side of the story.
There was no trick. Charlotte genuinely wanted Jonathan to come up to her flat. She was enjoying herself, really thought it was a great date. But she has concluded that perhaps she wasn't his type, and Maddie affirms that. It's cruel.
Cruel.
Jealous, bitter,
again,
catty.
Not the last time.
No, she's not a nice person in this episode.
No. Up in the bedroom, Jonathan peers out at the crime scene before looking through the cuttings, and we go back down to the living room where Gerry is melancholically playing an old record of his.
How can he hear it?
For Maddie. Very good point that. Maybe he's got a hearing aid in.
Maybe.
But
then when Madeline talks to him, you can't hear her when she's not looking at him.
Unless he can't hear it, but he's playing it knowing what the song is.
Or just feels the vibrations or something like that, And Madeline says it's upsetting her and he should stop.
Yeah.
And then sends Charlotte off to make tea so that she can ask Gerry for a favour.
Yes. Back up to the bedroom. Jonathan is drawn to an article detailing an allusion where Mariella changed a Rolls Royce into a Porsche. The camera zooms in on this.
Yes, and Jonathan gets that sort of eureka look on his face.
He does. Back downstairs, we discover what the favour is.
Yeah, Jerry's able to confirm what Jonathan was saying about Madeline being a comfy sweatshirt. And
she takes it better than expected.
Certainly initially. She removes the video because she hears Jonathan coming back.
Yeah.
And he looks a bit smug and asks Gerry, when the man limped off, what leg was he putting his weight on? Much of what follows relies on this recollection being accurate.
Yes, he then states that someone has done something very clever, yet very stupid at the same time.
Yeah, you're immediately thinking reflection of some kind when we're talking about which leg. Anyway, we'll find out more.
In Pryke's office, he ponders out loud to Richie what they should believe about the case and if they should take the word of a man named after what?
An inflammation of the foreskin. I wondered if maybe this was a line, if not improvised, at least suggested by Rick Mail.
Would not surprise me.
The level of humour, slightly different from what we're used to on the show.
Indeed.
This is a play on words. I like a play on words.
He then appears to have his own eureka moment as he moves his desk lamp towards some of the data.
It looks like he's got autopsy photos on his table.
Right.
They're all of Marella's face.
Yeah.
And then there is a couple of her with her sister.
But I think that he references a lamp, and I think
Yeah.
it must mean he's worked out.
Yeah. There's a eureka moment of his own.
Yeah, it's because the lamp moves rather than...
Yeah.
Back to the house. Jonathan and Maddie are leaving, and they're disturbed by what?
Bat. And no, I don't mean Maddie.
Yeah, Gerry can't work out why they are around that area in January. I think they should be hibernating or whatever they do.
Yeah. Disregarding that somewhat, Charlotte offers to run Jonathan home and save Maddie. A lot of extra driving.
Yeah, and you can imagine this would make her more than slightly jealous.
Yeah, but what can she do?
So it's sometime later that evening, and we see Maddie arrive at their own home. She's upset with what?
Well, this made no sense to me. She pulls back her covers and screams at the sight of cockroaches. But then the camera pulls back, the entire floor's covered in cockroaches. How did you not notice the entire floor being covered in cockroaches?
Did she maybe not notice until she'd walked in and turned on a bedside lamp?
Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, it's like these scenes, you see them in movies sometimes. Folk get surprised by something jumping on them, then it pulls out. There's a big field in front of them.
Yeah.
They must have seen it running from quite far away.
Yeah.
But yes, she is unhappy at the idea of this cockroach infestation.
You can imagine. After a pit stop for a meal, Jonathan and Charlotte finally arrive back at his windmill, and there's a bit of flirting and obvious attraction remaining.
Yeah, she's obviously over the death of her mother a day and a half earlier now and happy to engage in romantic pursuits.
This, however, is brought to an abrupt end with the sudden appearance of Maddie at the car door.
Jonathan's face is like thunder.
She's looking for a bed for the evening, and inside, Jonathan makes it clear he's not at all happy with her.
Look, all right. It's bad enough I get home to the 7 plagues of Egypt without you giving me a hard time. I just thought maybe I could be useful here tonight, that's all.
What, as a contraceptive?
As a sounding board, in case you wanted to discuss stuff. I suppose you'd have just got into the bed and spent the entire night being eaten alive.
Chance would be a fine thing. Talk about a winning line on your lottery ticket. There's skid marks out there now. We should go and get home quick enough. God, what are you like?
I don't know, Jonathan. What am I like? A comfy old sweatshirt? You're happy to keep putting on day after day? Or a pair of underpants you can't be bothered to change for a month?
How did you...
Baffling, isn't it? And now I've got your undivided attention, you can tell me what it was you found in that scrapbook this afternoon that suddenly put a spring in your step.
It may be nothing. I don't know. Magazine piece about 16 years ago. Guy went round to her house to do an interview and was treated to an impromptu illusion in which Miss Carney turned a Rolls Royce into a Porsche before his very eyes.
So?
There's the shape of something here that's breathtakingly impressive, but I really need to sit down with it for a while.
Maddie then suggests that it would be useful for them to find Hannah and Mr. Magic Fingers himself.
Yeah, we didn't mention it earlier on, but Adam told Jonathan that he'd found a mystic guru who could help ease his aches and pains, and Jonathan at this stage puts 2 and 2 together and finally reaches 4.
Yeah, so we head over to Adam's house where he is indeed going to be the next gullible victim for Hannah and her business partner.
Lau.
Adam's lying on the table, looking in good shape.
Yep, before the trick or the
Con.
can take place, Jonathan interrupts.
Jonathan and Maddie.
She's there too.
Yeah, she grabs Lau's arm and discovers the hidden flesh already in his hand. The caper is up.
Yes, and there's a shock to come for Hannah.
What's that?
She did not know that her aunt had died.
No.
Not her aunt, obviously her mother, as it turns out, but... and obviously she knows at this point as we find out that it was her mother. But she doesn't seem quite as distressed as you might imagine.
No, we can chat about that. When you think about it, it does make some sense. But in the hall, an embarrassed Adam is trying to rationalise his gullibility to Jonathan.
Yeah, there's a degree of anxiety in his speech, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like he's been caught out doing something really stupid.
Well, I mean, you're a magician yourself, a high-profile one, and you've been fooled by this little con man.
Yeah.
Back in the other room, Hannah admits that she discovered it was her mother and not her aunt, that's Marilla that is,
Yeah.
within seconds of being back, and she understandably felt cheated and betrayed.
Yeah, and we get an Inception-like moment of a flashback within a flashback here.
That's exactly what, yes.
As Hannah recounts her conversation with Beryl, as it turned out, who recounts the accident.
Yes.
And essentially, yes, it was Marella in the middle of that chair getting cut in half lengthwise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, she wasn't in the middle, she was on the outside.
okay, yes, the blade was in the middle. And in the seconds after her death, Beryl looked out the window, saw Charlotte and Gerry playing together, and didn't think they deserved to have their happiness brought to a sudden end when her own daughter was off sticking needles in her arm somewhere else.
So this is why Hannah doesn't act as you would expect. In her mind, for years now,
Yeah.
her own mother is dead.
Yes. And finding out that she's not dead, she actually betrayed her to the extent that she would rather have been somebody else's mother. You can imagine why that might be hurtful enough for her not to feel immediate grief.
Definitely understandable. Outside in the car, Maddie is frustrated that they seem to be making little headway. Jonathan cryptically states that they need to speak to someone from the local wildlife trust and references the bat.
Yeah, and we shortly see them at a bat habitat,
We do.
which has clearly been disturbed.
And that's why they were seen at the nearby Canary house.
When we got the traditional POV shot, did you expect bats to come flying down the sort of in the tropey way down the corridor? It didn't happen, but there was a dead bat on the floor and a man who was either asleep or dead.
And we're given a jump scare.
Yeah, the jump scare we maybe expected seconds earlier from the bats, we now get from this man who jumps up and runs off with a limp.
Maddie thinks that the whole escapade has been no use, but Jonathan believes they now have the answer to how the whole thing had been worked.
Yeah, you can see the man runs off with his weight on the left, which is counter to what Gerry recalls.
Back to the Canary house. Charlotte is working in the garden. She's collecting wood, I think.
Yes, and her cousin Hannah arrives.
They stare at each other. There's a little standoff for a moment, and we can see the tension is mounting.
It's like if you ever watched The Simpsons, Maggie has an enemy. It's a monobrowed baby that goes past. It's a bit like one of those scenes.
Yes. We don't find out what they're discussing just now because we head over to Pryke's office where Detective Ritchie speaks.
For the first time.
Yeah, but that doesn't really solve the gender issue at this point.
There isn't an issue, it's a man. Anyway.
Tenor.
Pryke is told there's an email and a tooth has been identified, at which point...
They gather around the large PC screen.
Yeah, I don't think they understand how email works when they're directing this scene, because you don't need to type things to see other parts of an email. You just kind of scroll down a wee bit.
So Pryke is very surprised to discover who the owner of the tooth is. But before we can find out, Maddie and Jonathan arrive and they've got to explain something. Or yes. Jonathan certainly does.
No, he absolutely does, because the analysis of the tooth shows that it is him.
How can that be? Did you remember this from watching it the first time?
No.
Did you? No. So you're a bit shocked?
A little bit, but I was trying to remember back. Did Pryke mention to them that he had a tooth to analyse? He did, didn't he? How did Jonathan not think, I've just lost one?
No, I'm not sure if he did.
He said it's as unique as a fingerprint. But yes, they weren't there. It was when they were in the woods and Maddie and Jonathan weren't there. So Jonathan didn't know they were analysing this tooth. That explains it.
What is the actual explanation?
He lost his tooth in the toffee and it had been in the matchbox, which we saw in the hut, and it must have been stolen with the newspapers.
Simple when you know how.
Yeah, just convenient that the guy who was really close to this murder-suicide happened to break into Maddie's car and steal her papers and the toffee with Jonathan's tooth in it. These things happen.
That's another example of Pryke's impressive attitude. So rather than being very downbeat about this massive lead leading nowhere, he immediately says that they'll just have to tackle things and open up a new front.
Yeah, and also he is willing to accept Jonathan's perfectly plausible explanation. Yes. On face value. He's not thinking, oh, well, maybe he's at it. He knows Jonathan's not a bad guy.
No. Maddie, however, has good news, and at this, Pryke's eyes sparkle. But before they can reveal what this is, they both, Maddie and Jonathan that is, lean back in their chairs to try and see which of the toilet doors Ritchie goes through, male or female.
Okay. We cut across to the Carney home where Gerry's polishing his weapon.
Excuse me. He's got his gun out, cocked and loaded. No, probably not. But at this, he notices Hannah and Charlotte arguing in the snow.
And Charlotte seems upset.
We can hear what's being said.
Can we?
Yes. It appears that Charlotte is now finding out the truth.
Yes, Hannah's telling her about the whole Beryl and Morella thing.
She's in bits, whilst Hannah is colder. And she said that she wants to reclaim her own mother in death. She'd lost her throughout her life.
Yes.
So it's...
At least now that they're both dead, let me have this, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit later, Maddie, Jonathan Pryke and Richie.
And a red shirt cop.
Mm-hmm.
So right. We should really... I don't know if I should call him a red shirt cop. He doesn't get killed off.
No, he's not then.
No. He looked to me like a potential red shirt when he came in there. He'd never been mentioned before.
No.
He just was there to get knocked off at some point, but no.
They arrive at the home in sombre mood and meet Hannah and Lau, who were just about to leave. However, Pryke requests that they stay.
Meanwhile, Madeline, Jonathan head up the stairs.
And as they do, what do we see, or what do they see?
Well, Gerry sees Charlotte climbing a ladder and draws his gun, which is all meant to be a bit ominous, but we know he's not going to harm Charlotte. Charlotte is trying to hang herself. Fortunate that she had a noose and a set up for hanging to hand in the seconds after Hannah spoke to her, but she did. It's to no avail because Gerry's such an accurate shot, as we learned earlier on. He's able to shoot the rope with a single bullet and bring her to the ground.
Doc Brown style.
I wouldn't know.
Back to the Future 3.
Oh, that Doc Brown?
Yeah.
I thought you meant the one with Martin Clunes.
No, that's Doc Martin.
Okay.
So Gerry saves his daughter.
Yes, and everyone gathers together for a finale reminiscent of perhaps Last Salute to the Commodore in
Yes.
Columbo or any Poirot episode.
Yes. It's the drawing room, which I think I've called it now.
It's really quite cruel by the police when you think about it. Charlotte's just tried to kill herself. Her father's just seen this and had to shoot her to safety.
Yeah, but he mentions that himself.
Yeah.
He says, I know this is now, this is what we have to do. This is how it's all going to be wrapped up. It's almost like a nod to the genre.
And to the absurdity of the whole thing. Yeah. Gideon is clearly the man leading the show.
I can see there's a lot for people to come to terms with here. A woman who for 15 years took on her sister's role as a wife and mother. Became that wife and mother for all practical purposes. Did it matter at the end of the day what name she was born with? Evidently, to one person in this room, it mattered enough to murder. Problem, though. How do you kill someone so it looks as if they'd done it themselves? Not once, but twice. First in the morning with an overdose, then again at 4 o'clock with a rifle. And more bafflingly, why? And what do we make of this mystery figure in the snow, this limping man? The last person, apparently, to speak to her before she died. As it turns out, not a lot.
He was just some bloke, basically, living rough in the woods of a slightly nervous disposition with a dodgy leg.
A man who had nothing to do with anything, and yet without whom we'd never have been able to lock this case up. Yes, of all the details, the dodgy leg was the clincher. Just slightly ahead of that lamp in the conservatory. Of course, the flex hadn't been shortened at all. It was the table that had been moved further away. That much I'd fathomed, though why was still beyond me.
You feel like he wanted to say, this was the greatest clue, just short of for this giant inflatable panda, or something equally ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's on the verge of something hilarious right the way through that speech, but doesn't quite get to deliver a punchline.
It's like watching Leslie Nielsen in Columbo.
Yes, being serious, yes. Jonathan goes on to explain how Gerry was fooled.
It was all done with mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors. Yes.
Okay, explain what happened, or at a high level what happened.
Well, it's exactly the same as was described in that newspaper article about the cars. One of the panes in the conservatory is replaced with a mirror, and because the garden's so large and kind of symmetrical with woods and so on around it, it just looks like another part of the garden while you're sitting in a particular location in the seat. Obviously, it's been measured up and done to a certain specification, and somehow Lionel remembered exactly where the chair had to be exactly which panel it was, where the mirror had been stored, and was able to implement the trick.
Mm-hmm. Was that the first time you mentioned Lionel was the killer?
Well, that's up for debate still.
Okay. Yeah, Lionel, he goes on to admit that he had suspected many times over the preceding years that Morella was actually Beryl and that the accident was no such thing. Beryl had everything to gain and her own life was a mess, apparently.
Yeah, he felt she had stolen the perfect family and believed it was time for justice.
Correct.
I should say we don't actually get any proof that she killed her sister.
We don't.
Her own recap, when we saw the reconstruction, it was still an accident that she responded to. So she doesn't tell people that she murdered her sister. She didn't tell Hannah that she murdered her sister.
No. So they're two, Hannah wasn't in league with Lionel.
No.
So we've got two independent witnesses who have known the victim for years.
Yeah.
There's no other motive for Lionel to do it. And Hannah says she noticed straight away that that's who this was. And in fact, her mother, we see in the clip that her mother...
Okay, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that it is Beryl.
Yeah.
But the question is, did Beryl murder Morella? Or was it an accident?
Yeah, sure.
So there's conflicting views. The one that Hannah's told is it was an accident, and Beryl responded to that by ditching her own family and taking over Morella's to save them heartache.
Sure.
Whereas Lionel's of the view that, no, she did this on purpose to steal Morella's family and her life.
In any case, with the help of Jonathan, the specifics of the murder are then uncovered, along with the unforeseen vagrant problem and the fact that Gerry decided to try and walk to his wife. Tell us about those two issues.
Yeah, okay, so we see this in reconstruction as well. Lionel goes into Beryl's room and shoots her while she sleeps and carries the body out and lays her in the garden. Times this for Gerry waking up, and in the reflection he is hooded and intends to just shoot himself or pretend to shoot himself, and then when Gerry runs out he'll find Morella. But this vagrant approaches him and he has to ward him off with the gun. It's quite bold vagrancy coming to somebody's garden to ask them for money. But anyway, he does this and is surprised that Gerry, as you said, Gerry comes outside instead of going in. His plan was when Gerry went into the house to phone the police or the ambulance, he would then get up, run off, sort things out, remove the mirror and so on. But in the event, he's able to manage those things anyway, because Gerry doesn't look round. Fortunately, he's able to nip into the house, sort everything out, and hope that Gerry didn't see the vagrant.
Yeah. There was, however, a more complicated issue.
Yeah, there's a twist in this tale. She was already dead when he shot her.
Yeah, she, as we know, had overdosed earlier in the day.
So it's not a murder.
No. Now, we have discussed this on different podcasts, and it's an interesting one. I'm not sure how... See, in my mind, I'm thinking logically, if I shoot a dead body, to me that's attempted murder. You know, if I attempted to murder someone, that was my intention.
Yes, so in Scots law, certainly there's two elements to a crime. So you've got mens rea, the mental aspect, and then you've got the physical carrying out the crime. So he certainly had the intention to commit murder, but he didn't physically commit murder. He didn't kill anybody. So it can't be murder.
No, it's not. But I'm saying attempted murder is still you get a hefty sentence. Now, just because the person was already dead, surely you should still be convicted of attempted murder.
But you've only got one part of the crime. You can't murder someone who's dead. It's not possible, even though you wanted to.
Yeah, but you've attempted it.
You've tried to kill them, but attempted murder is usually you do something that could have killed them. You tried to kill them, but were unsuccessful.
Yeah, that was the case here.
I suspect that's not what you get charged with.
I suspect you're right, but to me, logically, if you're talking about justice, you were going out there to kill someone, you should be punished for attempting to kill someone. It wasn't because of anything you did or didn't do that meant that you didn't do that.
Yeah, but similarly, if you try to kill someone and you shoot them and you miss,
you would be charged with attempted murder.
Yeah, I suppose. Anyway, he'll get charged with something. There'll be an offence.
Yeah, I mean, the messing about with bodies. I'm not sure what the technical term is.
It's in the Messing About with Bodies Act, 1973.
Yeah. I mean, before 73, you could do what you liked.
Desecration of a corpse or something.
All that type of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, or breach of the peace, you would cover it with up here.
Yeah, everything's breach of the peace.
Yes. Looking at someone the wrong way, breach of the peace, in the van. Anyway, the scene ends in a horrific way with this focus on the creepy giant mannequin lady. I would give nightmares to the gentlest of spirits.
It would. So later, Pryke, Jonathan and Maddie are leaving through the gates, and a very gracious and charming Pryke invites them to pop in for a cuppa whenever they want.
Yeah, and Maddie gives him credit for sniffing out Lionel all along.
Yes, as Jonathan explains how the reversed limp was a clue.
Yeah, Jonathan asks Gideon what the charge will be, as we just discussed, and he thinks it'll be possession of an offensive haircut.
I like that line.
At this point, Richie and Pryke leave, and hilariously we discover that both Maddie and Jonathan have swapped sides on the gender debate.
Yes, and they now up their wager to £20 a head.
Hilarious.
Uh-huh.
Jonathan's mobile rings.
It takes a call which leaves him exasperated.
Adam's in hospital. He's been beaten up by Elsa.
Yeah, and you think to yourself at this point, yep, quite right. He deserves this.
But there's another twist to come.
There is.
The Austrian lady turned out to be a disciple of Adolf Hitler.
She had stepped out the shower in her altogether, and Adam had noticed firstly that she wasn't quite as pure as perhaps he'd thought. She had a piercing where...
A sensitive area.
Yes, and hanging from that piercing was a swastika.
Yes, and he points out to Jonathan that anti-fascist polemic doesn't make for great foreplay. That's apt these days, isn't it?
Certainly.
Apparently being anti-fascist is no longer acceptable for some people.
Yeah. For once, Adam was in the right, and he had the moral high ground.
And then we're introduced to the best character in the entire episode. Upstaging Pryke.
You recognised him?
Yes, of course.
Yep. I've not actually got him in my notes.
Okay. Sanjeev Kumar? Yeah, no, he's really funny normally, and he's great in this. He tells Adam, if you keep sticking swords into young ladies, they're bound to turn nasty. And after something we'll talk about in a minute with Maddie and Jonathan, he then starts pulling the curtains back and forth, and Adam see if he can make himself disappear.
Yes, abracadabra, that type of thing. Yeah.
Basically mocking him relentlessly.
I don't think we mentioned that earlier in the episode. Adam had been moaning about the fact every time a magician goes to hospital, he always has to put up with these quips, so that's why he doesn't like going, perhaps why he was seeking an alternative route.
Yes, and as the episode ends, he is exasperated.
Yes.
But just before that, we got perhaps the peak of Madeline's vicious nature.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I've got perhaps a defence, so go on.
Madeline tells Jonathan that it would stick to her conscience, or she wouldn't be able to live with herself if she didn't explain to him something she'd discussed with Charlotte. Now, what she actually discussed with Charlotte is Charlotte's bemusement at Jonathan not coming up to the flat and the fact that she really liked him and they'd had a great time. But what she tells Jonathan is that Charlotte told her he's not her type.
Yeah.
He's clearly gutted, but kind of covers for it a bit.
Oh, see, that's the thing. I'm not sure Jonathan actually knows the truth, but realised that perhaps Charlotte wasn't for him, and he is happy with that comfortable jumper, and he's happy enough to know that Maddie was so jealous or would go to that extreme that means that she likes him as well, and if Jonathan does prefer Maddie to Charlotte, and they're a better fit, I think, then I think he might just be happy knowing that.
Maybe. I mean, he did have dinner with Charlotte and would know for himself how she felt, or at least could act for himself on that if he wanted to take it further.
Although what I would say is that's fine that Jonathan's happy with that. However, it doesn't change the fact that
it's a cruel thing to do.
Very cruel thing to do.
Someone who's meant to be your friend.
Yeah. It was horrible. She had to look a bit of an arse in this episode.
Yeah. In any event, she needs to come and stay at the windmill a while longer. The exterminator's going to take weeks or maybe months.
Yeah. Oh, it was quite sweet. You know, they were arm in arm as they walked off.
He just seems like he's been beaten down at that point to me. It just seems like he's been conned and tricked, and he thinks things are great, but really there was something that might have been good that he's not been allowed to explore.
Yes, yeah. I'm hanging on to the fact that perhaps I think they both know and they are best suited to each other.
Maybe. Okay.
But anyway, that's where we end it. And like we said at the beginning, I think a thoroughly enjoyable episode. Very strong episode. Nice mystery, good clues, excellent guest spots, all round top hole.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was fantastic.
We didn't go through any of the actors during the podcast there because there are actually quite a few this week. And I thought it'd be easier just to do them all at the end in one go.
Okay.
We'll start with the original air date, which was the 24th of December 1998, and it was a 90-minute episode, and this podcast certainly feels like it.
Yeah.
Hannah Gordon played Marella Carney, born in 1941 in Edinburgh, I believe.
Also played Beryl.
Recently starred in Unforgotten, but also Doctor Who Shada from 2003, Joint Account, Upstairs, Downstairs, My Wife Next Door, Doctor Who in 66 and 67, The Elephant Man, a David Lynch adaptation, and Watership Down.
She's one of the rabbits.
Yeah, don't know. Susanna Hamilton played her niece Hannah. Born in 1960, she has been in Julia, Out of Africa, Dino Sapien, The Bill, Casualty, and Streetwise. Gerry was played by Francis Matthews. He died in 2014, aged 86. Played the titular Paul Temple, good detective series there. Heartbeat, Don't Forget to Write. He was the voice of Captain Scarlet.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Dracula, Prince of Darkness, Rasputin, the Mad Monk, The Hellfire Club, I've mentioned that before, Trinity Tales, and Murder Ahoy, another Margaret Rutherford, Miss Marple. He won a Best Actor award at Cannes.
There you go.
Rick Mail, the fabulous Rick Mail, played Detective Inspector Gideon Pryke. He died, unfortunately, in 2014, aged 56. He was at the forefront of the alternative stand-up comic movement of the 80s, a long-time acting partner of Adrian Edmondson, known for The Young Ones, Bottom, The New Statesman, Blackadder, Drop Dead Fred, An American Werewolf in London, the comic strip presents King Arthur's Disasters, Watership Down, The Bill, Filthy Rich, and Cat Flap, amongst many, many other things.
Yeah.
In 1998, he had a very serious quad bike accident, and he was in a coma for 5 days.
That must have been right after this was filmed, or around about the same time.
Well, it was Easter 1998, so this was it must have been it must have been right after this, because this would have been filmed around about that time.
Yeah,
after December.
It didn't work straight away after the accident.
So it depends when this was actually filmed, but it wouldn't have been that much earlier.
No, it wasn't put out until December.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Lionel was played by Murray Melvin, born in 1932, a screen and stage actor. Starred in Barry Lyndon, The Phantom of the Opera, Star Hunter, Oscar's Orchestra. He was in The Craze, The Devils, and A Taste of Honey.
I thought he was exceptional in this.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I might be wrong. I think it might be Murray Melvin that won the Cannes Best Actor award. Sorry, sorry, Francis. I'm
taking it off you.
Taking this off you. Yeah, it was a mistake. It was PricewaterhouseCooper, KPMG.
That's who we're blaming. Few Dunaways to blame, really, when you think about it.
Kate Izzet played Charlotte. Now, I think you'll recognise her.
She had a familiar face.
Did you not watch Coupling? I thought you did.
Some time ago.
Ah, right. Okay, she starred in Coupling.
Yeah.
The Saint, Strictly Confidential, Doctors, and I first saw her in Is It Legal? That was a sitcom from the early 90s.
Okay.
Set in a lawyer's office, as you might be able to gather. Vincent Wong played Panduk Lau. He died in 2015 at the age of 87. He starred in Batman, the 89 version, and then Batman Begins.
Right.
He was also in Die Another Day, Mind Your Language, and Doctor Who in 77 and 83. Dave Haskell played Sergeant Ritchie.
Okay, there you go. Clears it up.
He has not been in many things, but his credits do include Derek, EastEnders, The Bill, and the comic strip Presents.
He played Janet in that.
Okay, any trivia for us?
One little bit, the fake surgery Vietnamese mumbo jumbo was based on stories of things Peter Sellers did to try and help his heart condition in his later years.
Interesting. Episode review. Let's rattle through these. We're getting on here. Motive.
Revenge, justice, order.
Clues. There's quite a few here, but some of them were red herrings. But anyway, the mark on the wall. Lionel claiming that he spoke to her when she was already dead. The bats, the press cuttings, the lamp cord, and the limp.
Yep, they're the main ones.
Yeah, because the tooth, not really. That was a red herring. Okay. The gotcha, there wasn't really a gotcha. Jonathan explained how it could have been done.
And he accepted it.
And he says, yeah. And then we discussed earlier, the guilty or not guilty. Well,
of what?
Of what, yeah. We've covered that already.
Certainly not guilty of murder.
No.
So, happy ending.
Yep. Yeah. Next time, we've got the first episode of Season 3, The Curious Tale of Mr. Spearfish.
Interesting.
Odd title.
Very.
I'm sure it'll explain itself when we watch it.
No doubt.
Okay, let's wrap things up. It's a very, very long episode.
It is. Let's just say cheerio and see if we can a couple of weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.